I got you there. Oh my
Hi.
goodness. But I love that your dog like lets you hold them. Right now, my pug Charlie is wrapped in a blanket. I wonder if I can. This is her signature
Ooh.
space. So I an appearance. But in the meantime, Shannon, could you please introduce yourself and your
Sure.
lovely
My name
pup?
is Shannon Kopp. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a national mental health advocate at ERC Pathlight. And this is my therapy dog. She's not a trained therapy dog, but she's my everyday therapy. This is Bella Kopp. She is almost 13. She's completely blind. And very scared right now because we had a snowstorm and she's like born and raised in California. And so this is all very new to her. So she's a little bit nervous, but I adopted her when she was 8 weeks old from the San Diego Humane Society after I had gone about a year for the first time in 8 years without engaging in bulimia, which was a huge milestone. And really she was the goal of adopting an animal was like a driver in my motivation in recovery, because I knew what a big responsibility it is to bring another family member into your home. I was like the only person working at the Humane Society that didn't have a pet. And I was just really trying to get to a place with my mental health where I was well enough to have a pet. And so I adopted Bella when she was 8 weeks, and she's been my ride or die with me throughout all of life's ups and downs, and really is key to everyday mental health for me. So I'm really happy she's here. I was nervous the snow might make her like want to go under the bed, but she's right here.
You know where you are as well. We were just hit with a huge storm. So I so much want to dive into more about your story. But in the meantime, I'm going to kick off my pug and make her get out of her blanket. Hang on a sec. People are like, Kaylee, I didn't even know you had a pug. And I'm like, you wouldn't, because she's always underneath something. So this is, hi, this is my dog, Charlie. Her name is Charlie Bit My Finger and It Hurts and It's Still Hurting. I got her way back in the day when that YouTube video, I'm sorry, I will let you go. We're going to tuck her back in. I got her back in the day right after a really significant loss in my life, and I really needed something to care for. And so I think that's, Shannon, why we really bonded over our pets, is because they both came to us during a pretty significant moment in time on our mental health journey. So do you want to share a little bit more about, kind of your journey toward Bella and kind of the mindset that you needed to be in to have her? I think that that's such an important conversation.
So much. And I love how animals just always are so authentic, right? They don't have this like dialogue in their head like, well, I should be not in my blanket, or I should really be out here smiling for this IG live, right? They're like, no, this is what comforts me. Let me be comforted. Like it's such a beautiful reminder that it's really, especially for someone like myself who struggles with self-care and prioritizing my mental health and recovery, how Bella just always seems to prioritize, what she needs in the moment, whether that's like a patch of sunlight by the window or she wants to go under the cover. She just, she just does those things so naturally. So I loved it. And I also loved the moment when you two looked at each other. That was so cute. I know.
And she's like, don't ever do this.
It was like clear was like communicating to you with her eyes, and you were like, okay, I hear you. It was awesome. But yeah, I struggled with bulimia and depression for 8 years throughout high school, throughout college, and after. I grew up in a traumatic home where there was a lot of alcoholism and mental illness, and I really blamed myself for a lot of the issues I faced. I had a lot of self-judgment about why I was struggling so much to get better. And then I also blamed myself for issues I think, my family members, particularly my father, dealt with. And I found myself in a treatment center in the middle of the desert at age 24. And I was able to access and I feel very privileged for this, it's 80 to 90% of people diagnosed with eating disorders are not able to access treatment. And so it was such a gift to be able to access 2 days of residential care. And then I was in this treatment center for a couple weeks for PHP. And then I was discharged back to my home in San Diego. And I really just felt so at a loss, because it was the first time I felt when I was in that treatment center that the eating disorder was a bit under control, that it wasn't just completely ruling my life. And I was so scared. And I started working with a therapist who did a lot of ACT with me, helped me get back into my values, helped me get back to the person I was before this whole eating disorder started. And I was an animal lover from like day one. So I applied for a job at the San Diego Humane Society, and there was a dog named Buster who came in from a humane investigations case. And there was one morning when I was really struggling. I had relapsed into the bulimia and feeling really hopeless. And Buster was only 4, but he had arthritis in his legs because he had been left on a tied to a pole for the 4 years of his life outside. So he couldn't really stand. And I was having these really like intrusive, hopeless thoughts. And then all of a sudden Buster stood, and I was able to lean over and kind of help him, because I was like, oh, I don't want you to fall, Buster. And we just kind of embraced each other. And that was the moment I realized that animals were such a profound regulation tool for me. That, more than breath work, more than yoga, more than journaling, more than anything I had tried to kind of like calm my mind, holding an animal was like the place where I could get a little bit of distance from the eating disorder. And after that moment was actually when I called my therapist and got more help and got in touch with a psychiatrist and support groups, and started really dreaming of Bella, having a dog of my own that I could care for. And then she came into my life about a year later, and she's helped me through everything. I'm constantly holding her. I sleep with her. And back in the depths of eating disorder recovery, she came with me to all my therapy appointments, my dietitian appointments. She sat on my lap while I tried fear foods. Even though she tried to eat them with me, it was fine. When I had to get new clothes after treatment, she's in the dressing room with me. She once even came into the shower when I had a panic attack. And now she sits, actually still 13 years later, she's blind, so she can't really see where the shower is, but she's always like in the bathroom, like I feel like just in case that moment happens again, which thank God it hasn't. So such a huge source of support for me.
100%. And I think what's so special about dogs is you don't have to teach them. You were saying she's not a certified therapy dog. My dog is, but I cannot say that it made her a better therapy dog. She just happens to have a piece of paper, but dogs don't need any training to be so connected to their person. And that love is, I think, the most like honest form of love that you can receive is from a pet. They love you on your good days. They love you on your bad days. They love you through some of the hardest, things that we go through. And that is, to be so deeply loved. I think I didn't know that about your childhood, but same, like growing up in an environment where unconditional love was a foreign concept, like not really understanding like this transactional love that many families, experience. And when I got my dog, and I don't even like to call her a dog because she's a pug and they're a different kind of thing. But when I got Charlie, that unconditional love really pulled me out of a place of severe depression and grief. And so for me, I got her a year after I lost somebody in a car accident very suddenly. And I had lost myself. Over the course of that year, I really just stopped speaking. I stopped seeing people. I let my relationships all just kind of fade away. And I just really wasn't myself. But I knew in my heart, like I really desired something to like hold in the absence of the person who died. And so I got on Facebook Marketplace the day before St. Patrick's Day. So we're coming up on, oh my gosh, almost 9 years together. And I found something called a pug wawa. And I was like, what is that? Because I can't just get a lab I have to get something that's like specific and curious and
Right.
makes people
Right.
think like, what is that? Tell me more. And was born in kind of a really rough circumstance. And so when I went to go decide, am I going to get this dog or not, she was in a really harsh environment. You know, it was one of the people who, you know, breed dogs without really having any business doing that, and really not keeping them safe and not keeping them clean. And I just felt so called to be with her. And I originally wanted her sister, and her sister wanted nothing to do with me. And so I was like, okay. So I pick up this little pug that's like nibbling on my shoe, and I pick her up, and she just cuddles right into my neck. And I didn't know how much I needed her until that exact moment. I was like, I need you to be with me. And so for, I would say like that whole one, like the whole second year of my grief, she was my companion. She slept, she was little, she was like this big, and she slept on my neck. And she got me through times when I didn't want to get out of bed. She had to go to the bathroom. Like, you have to let her out. You have to go out there with her. Despite myself, I found myself laughing at her. We call it the zoomies. So she will just all of a sudden like need to run around in like really fast circles. And if you throw a blanket on her, she will collapse and go to sleep right away. So she's like just a funny dog. And she pulled me out of places that, you know, I did not think I was going to get out of. And so, when I started grief counseling at my local hospice, I was like, you know what? This dog has a gift for caring for people, and in such a calm, lazy way. Like, you don't have to keep up with Charlie. You just have to be whoever. And so I did get her pet therapy certified through my local hospice, which is kind of a cool way to do it because it's all free. And then I got to bring her to work with me. I got to take her to our kids' grief camps. She became quite a mascot. And through our time together at hospice, she companioned so many children through losses in their life. And so it just really speaks to the power of like, it doesn't even need to be your dog. Like, it just needs to be this like creature, and it doesn't have to be a dog. It can be a creature that just you feel called to connect with, as you did
Buster.
with,
Yeah.
was his name Buster?
Yep.
You don't necessarily know. And when you're connected to pets, like, it really
So many
changes a
things.
lot of things.
I'm really grateful I had a therapist who recognized too. She said there was equine therapy at the treatment center I went to, and when I had come back, like I said, I was so discouraged. And she's like, you know, the only time I kind of see your eyes light up are when you talk about these horses. And I think I interacted with them once, and that whole, but it was just the one moment I think I felt hope. I felt safe. I felt like Shannon, you know, is more than this eating disorder that's taken her down. Like I just, and so she was really helpful. And I actually don't even think she was an animal person. I worked with her for 10 years, and Bella would come in and be like, Bella, I love Bella because she's very quirky and she has anxiety and she's not really well trained and she's just kind of like does her thing. And sometimes she'd get the zoomies like you talked about, and my therapist would be like, oh God, what's happening? But she knew, like she said, when Bella's with you, you're sharing more with me. You're more present. And I showed up. Another thing she said is I would show up more consistently when I had Bella. Like, I was definitely that one that was like, yes, I'm going to do therapy. And then it would be the day and I'd be like, cancel, not doing this. But if I had Bella, I think I just felt more comforted to do this hard thing. Right. And so, I'm grateful that she encouraged her to come to our sessions. And then when I was at work, she gave me a lot of tools to do, like in the kennels when I was with the dogs, and things like that, mindfulness practices, ways to kind of focus on the animal's breathing, or play with them, and kind of get out of my own head.
Yeah. And I can't help but wonder, you know, did those concepts that you learned from your therapist kind of inspire you within the nonprofit that you started, SoulPaws? So do you want to tell us a little bit about how that came to be and what it is
so
there?
that's exactly right. I felt like animals, you know, my story is not unique. I feel like every person, like when my book came out, I got so many emails wherever I went. People are saying, me too. This animal saved my life. This animal saved my life. And so I thought, I support groups have been really beneficial to my recovery, especially, is the ones I've attended, and ad support groups, the Alliance, they're free, right? And there's a sense of community there and camaraderie, and clinician-led support groups were really helpful to me. So I thought, how can we combine a clinician-led support group with the power of therapy animals? And so when I was pregnant with my first son, so 7 years ago, we started having workshops at the San Diego Humane Society, led by a clinician, and then we would have therapy animals there. So these would be either miniature horses and dogs together that regularly work in hospitals or crisis situations. Sometimes we just do dogs. Sometimes we would do small animals like rabbits and guinea pigs and rats, partnering with either the Humane Society, or we partnered with Paws and Hooves crisis response pet therapy teams. They have a long name, but we partnered with these incredible organizations where, like, the animals, like to your point, had a gift for comforting people, and we kind of naturally gravitated towards this rhythm in our groups, which was, let's meet the animals, let's meet each other, and then let's do some kind of grounding exercise. So we would do a loving kindness meditation with the animals, or when we were at the Humane Society, sometimes we would do a walking meditation through the Humane Society. I have to preface this by saying this Humane Society is like not your normal, the animals live in apartment-like habitats with like TV set to Animal Planet and themed rooms designed by like LA designers. There was like Buster was in the Hollywood room, so there were pictures of like Lassie on the wall and Rin Tin Tin, and so it was like an incredible place. And so like a mindful walk through there. So we just kind of, this was just kind of the rhythm we got. So it was, grounding. Then we would do, which is my favorite part, 20 minutes of connecting with the animals. So pure silence, and everybody would kind of spread throughout the room, and the animals would just visit them one by one, each person, and sit in their lap. You could comfort them, hold them, pet them, look into their eyes. And it was really, it's always an emotional experience for me, and I observed in others too, because how often in life do we slow down, get quiet, like there's no phones, there's no noise, there's nothing except this loving animal looking at you. So we'd do this for 20 minutes, and then we'd have a clinician-led discussion. And so we started these workshops in San Diego. Then we started doing them in Philadelphia with Dr. Patricia Flaherty-Fichette. And from her work, we learned that we were actually, the kind of model we were using in our workshops aligned with the model of Dr. Bruce Perry, which is a neurosequential model, which basically says you have to regulate first before you can get to this top part of your brain where you're doing the work of recovery, your cortex, and you're thinking about what's the next right thing. And all of that stuff happens here, but so often we're dysregulated down here. So animals can help us calm. And then another part of his research said how important connection is to also accessing that part of the brain. So it was just really interesting that his model says, what is it? I'm not a therapist. Regulate, relate, reason. And so it was just fascinating to us that we were, doing this with the animals. So we kind of formalized that into a bit of a curriculum, and now are doing more workshops in that format. So yeah, that's kind of what SoulPaws is in a nutshell. And it feels like, it feels very special because I think the animals help it to feel so safe. So it gives space, I think, for people to share a little bit more vulnerably, or maybe try something they haven't tried before, like a support group, because the animals are there.
Well, they make it so brave, and almost because the focus isn't on like the vulnerability of the space and the people going to it. Like we, for the hospice I worked at, that we did a children's camp, and very similar camp, it's scary. Like you're leaving your parent or guardian for a weekend, and you're going to talk about really hard concepts that are kind of like not fair that you have to be doing this. And yet here we are. They would come in to check in, and we would just have therapy dogs all over the room because it was like, how can we make this less scary for these kids? And just for this moment, bring the pressure down by focusing on these little creatures that all they want is to be pet and maybe a snack if
Totally.
you have one.
I love that.
But I appreciate, this idea of like, brain research and trauma research and all of those things, like decades of research went into figuring out Dr. Bruce Perry's model. And yet it is such a natural, normal thing to be doing. It's the thing that feels good and it's the thing that feels right. Kind of like those two concepts coming together so beautifully to create a space for the people who got to benefit from that.
What also helps me with this kind of model too is I used to always think, what is wrong with me? Why do I could write a book on how to recover from an eating disorder. Like, I know all the things, but why can't I do the things in the moments I need to? Like, I was always just so baffled at the power of this illness and like how I had every intention in the world of not hurting anyone. I didn't want to disappoint anyone anymore. I didn't want to lie to anyone anymore. I didn't want this thing in my life. And I knew things that could help me get better, but it was like I just couldn't put it into practice until animals came along, because I think I was often just in such a dysregulated state, such a like stressed out state and shameful place that I really couldn't access like the higher parts, functioning parts of my brain that would say, okay, Shannon, like, you want to binge right now. You're turning to this for comfort, but it's not going to comfort you. Like, go find Bella, go for a walk, go do such and such. And so, before animals came along, therapists would say, go for a walk or take some breaths or do this grounding practice or do yoga. I love yoga. Yoga is like my jam, but I never could do it. I just couldn't in the moment. I was already too stressed and I just wanted the food. So then when animals came along, it was like, oh, I can do this. I can put her in my lap. Buster was enormous, so not in my lap, but I love that. Huge dogs often are the ones that want to be in your lap, right? And so for me, it was such a game changer because I was like, okay, I can breathe through this with Bella. I can, and usually it doesn't, if I can just kind of breathe through whatever intrusive thoughts I'm experiencing or the emotions, I can kind of get to a place where I know the next right thing to do versus, I just go and I maybe do something that comforts me quick in the moment, but has like long-term negative effects. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as you were sharing this story when we were talking before, you kind of spoke about, when you were first at the Humane Society, you're like the person without the pet, which I can't even step into a Humane Society or I'll have too many pets. But you desired to have one, but it took you time to really feel like you were in a space to be able to have Bella really join your life permanently. I'd love it if you would touch on kind of like that part of your process.
Yeah, of course, every day I wanted to take home animals, but I knew, and I did, I had a very loving mother who also loved animals, and I grew up with a dog named Sugar who I loved, and so I knew it was a job and that I was just struggling really to function and to take care of myself. And so I think it's important for, all of us to talk about, that whether it's with our loved ones or if we have a support group or a therapist, like the decision of bringing an animal into your life, because it's a big one. And I had seen so many people like on Easter, we would have everybody adopt out the bunnies and then be like, oh my God, bunnies live like 13 years and then return them a couple days later, right? Like, I had witnessed so many animals being returned when people realize, oh wait, this is a responsibility. And I didn't want to be one of those people. And I also was kind of, getting the love and comfort at my day job, which helped, I think, for sure. But other things I was able to do. I mean, and I know I was really fortunate to be living in a place where this existed, but there was a dog beach not far from me. So I went there like literally daily without a dog because I just wanted to be around these animals and it made me feel happier. And I do know, people that are in early eating disorder recovery that have visits with other people's pets or join SoulPaws workshops until they feel they're in a place where they can have a pet in their life. I know some people, and this is, another decision to talk about with the people closest to you, but that volunteer at humane societies and get their interactions with the animals that way. And, my long-term hope for SoulPaws is that SoulPaws really can help a lot of people that are struggling with their mental health challenges and aren't, maybe they're away from their pets or they're just not in a place where they can have a pet, and we can bring the love of those animals to them. I hope someday we can do that because it is so helpful. And it's I remember people would look at me like I was nuts when they'd say, "Oh, you work at San Diego Humane Society, how many pets do you have?" And I'd be like, "Well," and I wasn't gonna be like, "Well, I'm struggling with bulimia and depression, and I don't know if I'm gonna make it through another day, so I don't have a pet." No, I would make something up like my apartment, or I don't even know what I would say, but it was definitely like a hard space to be in. And I think that's why, having her, it was a real motivator to get her. And I kind of do feel like she was the perfect one for me. I actually had also, I feel like ashamed to say this in her presence, but I had liked her sister. But her sister, right, also wanted nothing to do with me. And so I was like, okay. And then Bella just wouldn't leave me alone. So I was like, I think it's this one.
Yeah. I think it's really beautiful how much thought and time you put into getting your pet. I think, it's another reason why I left Facebook Marketplace is because a lot of people, are getting pets because the desire to have one is there, but not necessarily being ready in life. So I really appreciate the conversation about different ways that you can kind of get what you need in regard to like that loving connection with a pet, visiting family who have pets, going to pet parks. But like, I was thinking like it's a good thing like children didn't bring you a lot of comfort and joy, because you just going at a park could have been a little weird.
Go to a dog park, totally, yeah.
Also, like volunteering at humane societies, we have in Spokane, Washington, we have a rescue that is also a restaurant. And so if you're interested in getting a pet, you basically like go to this restaurant and you're just surrounded by all the dogs, and like then you decide like, is this something, but they get to live in this really cool place regardless. And equine therapy is amazing. There's a lot of ways to get that connection with pets, and I love what you're doing with SoulPaws. And I just really appreciate, nonprofits exist as a result of such a deep love and connection to the mission. And I just appreciate you sharing that with us today and for doing what you do there.
I appreciate you sharing your story around grief and how, I mean, the timing of just getting an animal and that feeling. I've heard this a lot, and I've experienced it myself, where when someone you love, a human, passes, or even an animal, it is, I can't even find the words, but I've felt this, and I've heard other people say it was like I just needed someone to hold. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to explain myself. I didn't want to like worry if I was going to like, just because grief can be so overwhelming and kind of come right in waves and the randomest times. It can be kind of scary too. Like, I don't know when. So knowing I have a dog around, okay, I can fall apart here, and there's going to be, I'm not going to concern everybody. There's like a safety there. So it's like the love, the holding of someone when someone has been lost, or there's a void in your life, but then also the safety of, okay, it's okay. Because I think similarly to eating disorders, right, and that's why I appreciate your work so much. Grief can be really misunderstood, and we hear go through these stages or these steps, or And even pet loss can be people. I just know, like at the Humane Society, when an animal died, anyone, it could be anyone's pet, on the anniversary of that animal's passing, whether it was 5 years later, 10 years later, the president would come to your desk and say, I'm so sorry for your loss, because there was this acknowledgement that this is a deep, deep loss and it really impacts us. And so I just think, you're sharing about how an animal comforted you after loss, and the work you're doing to share with the world, realities about grief that I think aren't often discussed is so important.
Thank you. I mean, I can't tell you how many grievers I companioned as a counselor who had lost the primary person in their life, a parent, a child, a spouse, and their pet was the only
Right.
thing keeping them grounded to this world. Like our pets have a profound connection to us, and they keep us safe from ourselves sometimes, and that's really powerful as well. And I really, I just encourage anyone and everyone to like get familiar with pets, because they can seriously, if you know, so thank you, and thank you for coming, Bella. I was Carlia, but I really respect like
It's boundaries.
I never make my anything she doesn't want to do, and that's because we're very similar. And I have a dog, and the one in the camera, like right here all the time, and he's hiding. So I think he knows this isn't about him right now, which is really special. But thank you so much today, Shannon, and for just talking about pets and bringing Bella. You made my whole day.
Thank you so much.
You take care. Bye, Bella.
Bye.